Yeah, it's been, in fact, when the split in the Communist Party took place, almost the entire party in Himachal stayed with the original Communist Party, that is the CPI. And the leader of that was a very veteran communist by name Kameshwar Pandit. And it was in the early 70s that a few people who got together, one of them being Javed Alam, my father, and they started working mainly in the university, Himachal Pradesh University, which had been recently started, but also in a couple of trade unions. That work in the trade unions became really a big in the, when was this? In the mid 80s, when the hotel workers in Shimla, Kullu, Manali, bits of in Dharamshala, other places, Chamba, they went on a strike. And at that time, you see, the hotels were, there was a sudden boom of tourism in the mid 80s. The hotels were coming up, and the workers in the hotels were working in really inhuman, subhuman conditions. They were, working. There were no working times. There was no minimum wage. There was no any form of social security, any form of safety regulations, and the government was refusing to do any of that sort. So it was completely informal sector labor. It was, in a sense, really very, very exploitative conditions. And in those conditions, the Hotel Workers Union went on a long 3-month strike, and they were successful. And in the university, for example, the Students' Federation of India became a very powerful rallying force for students. And it would almost be that I remember I think it was 86 or 87, I don't really remember. This was immediately after the announcement of the new education policy by Rajiv Gandhi when he became Prime Minister. And the Students' Federation of India had taken a strong position against the new education policy. And when the convocation was held of the people who were students who were called to be given the gold medal, except for 2, I think, everybody else was an executive committee member of the Students' Federation of India. So these were not only radical students, but they were among the best students in the university. And each of them had decided to not only return the gold medal, but to tear their certificate on stage and hand it back to the governor, who was the chancellor of the university. And I remember it was an unprecedented act. That here are the brightest students of the university who are saying we don't want this degree because we are against the education policy of the government. And things of this sort, and the fact that students were organized into a form of, I mean, Himachal society is something which is, one would need complete diversion from this, but the levels of destitution or the economic problems that you see in other parts of the country, for example, Andhra Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh or other places, is not so in Himachal. But for students there to come in, often from fairly good backgrounds, wealthy backgrounds, well-off backgrounds, to become radicalized in the university was a great achievement of the Students' Federation of India. And people like my father and others who were there at that time. There was a person called Lallan Rai who was from, I think, from Eastern UP, Banaras or thereabouts. He was very active. There were others who were very active, and they built up a communist organization there. So that by the mid 80s, the situation was such that, and mid 80s was, before the Babri Masjid became big. So for almost 5-6 years at that time, the Congress and the RSS students groups, the NSY and the ABVP, would actually form a formal alliance. So 2 posts for the ABVP, 2 posts for the NSY, and they would fight against the SFI, and the SFI would still win all 4. It became that sort of a popular force there. And apart from the main university, it went out. And 80s was also the time of the Punjab violence, where the Khalistan movement had come up. 84 was the time when there had been this massive anti-Sikh killings organized by the Congress party, not only in Delhi, but, people talk about Delhi, but it happened in various other cities and places in India. And there would be instances where, in Himachal, for example, in Shimla, there would be some killing by the Khalistanis in Punjab, and immediately there would be groups from the RSS or associated with RSS who would come out in the streets trying to attack Sikh shops or Sikhs who would be there. and it was always the CPIM cadre, whether from the CITU, that is the trade unions, or the SFI, who would come out and physically confront them. And I remember still there was this very infamous killing in a place called Lalru, which was on the highway from Delhi to Chandigarh, where the Sikh fundamentalists had taken out Hindu passengers and shot them dead and left the Sikhs separate. So the day after that, when the news of that came, these Shiv Sena people and Bajrang Dal people with their little knives and all that started stopping buses which were coming to Shimla and taking out Sikhs and trying to beat them, and they could even have killed them. But before they could even start doing that in a major way, there were people from the Students' Federation of India and the CITU who went there and physically confronted them and stopped them. And the police was nowhere there. So it was the communist cadre who came out and physically stopped the Hindu right from doing this. So some of these things were a major achievement of the CPM there in Shimla, Himachal. And since then it has continued. I have not been that active or not stayed there since the mid-90s, so I don't know the great details, but I know, for example, organizing construction workers again in all the different road works, but most importantly in the hydropower works that are going on. The CPM trade unions have been very active in organizing electricity workers, in organizing PWD workers, in organizing apple orchardists and other horticulturists and things of that sort. And agriculture, like everywhere else in India, is in a crisis in Himachal. So organizing them together has, I suppose, apart from the students who have remained like a bedrock for the communist movement there, has led to a situation where today you have, for the first time, and it is also true that because of the politics that I mentioned here, the CPM has managed to win, apart from the student union elections, they have managed twice to win the MLA seat in the Shimla municipal, the Shimla seat of the assembly. But that has often been because there has been divisions within the Congress or some other things. But now, for the first time, it has happened in Himachal that the CPM candidates for the mayor and deputy mayor in Shimla have won a direct election. It's a direct election for the post of mayor and deputy mayor, defeating both the Congress and the BJP, and by substantial margins of 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 votes. And this is actually something which is a build-up of over almost 30 years, 35, 40 years of struggle. And in that sense, it is a very organic growth of radical politics there.